Yitzi, we can't bring your dad anywhere.
Okay, Shalom Aleichem. It's Purim Tafshin Pei Daled, 2024. And this is a Torah that I've entitled Reaching to the Essence of the Essence. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and we are going to, Bezrat Hashem, go exceedingly deep. And you will need concentration, but I hope it will be worth it, Bezrat Hashem. So we want to find out. There's a funny question. I don't know if anyone knows anything about the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I've spent the past month or two like looking into them. It's very interesting, and there's one of the funniest things. I think the funniest thing for me, coming from a Torah perspective, is that they found all Sifrei Nach, all of the 24 books of Nach, and multiple copies of each of them. Like Yeshayahu, they had like 30 copies. Of Bereshis, they had like 20 copies, multiple copies of all Sifrei Nach, except for Megillas Esther. None. There was no Megillas Esther found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I really want to try and answer why that might be. Okay. Another couple of questions that we're going to ask is what's pshat with Megillas Esther being the fifth book of the Megillas, the final Megillah, the fifth and final Megillah. And then a couple of textual questions. So there's very interesting medrash. It's also brought in the Gemara, I think. It's a medrash in Medrash Mishlei. I'll just read it quickly. It says, cut to the point, Shakol ha-moyadim asidim b'teilim, that all of the moyadim in the future will be bottled. Yeah, will be nullified. Shalom, Michael. V'mei Purim eina b'teilim la'olam, but the days of Purim will not be bottled forever. All of the moyadim, it says, Pesach, Shavuos, Lag BaOmer, Yom Kippur. It says in this mimer, it also says that Yom Kippur, there's a yesh omen that Yom Kippur won't be mivatal. But that's a crazy thing when we know that the mitzvahs are mamash nitzchi. The mitzvahs will never change. So how can it be that they're being mevatel? So we'll speak about that. B'ezrat Hashem. Another question is brought from the Rambam, okay, which is basically along the same lines. This is from the Rambam, Mishnah Torah Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah. Kol Sifrei Neviim v'Kol HaKesuvim Asidim Libatel Lemois Mashiach. All of the Sifrei Nevi'im and Kesuvim will be nullified in the days of Mashiach, chutz me Megillas Esther, except for Megillas Esther. He kayemes b'chamish chumshei Torah u'kehalachas shel Torah sheba'al peh she'ein b'terin la'olam. And that is going to be miskayem like the Chumash and like the halachas of Torah sheba'al peh, which will be miskayem forever. That's another crazy statement. All the other books of Nach, chutz from the Chumash, are gonna be nisbatel. They're just gonna fade into the annals of history, and there's gonna be Veish Shmois Vayikra B'Midva Devarim Esther. Wow, yeah. Then we've got another crazy Gemara. This one everyone knows, and this is definitely up there in the top 3 craziest Gemaras, maybe the top 2. That in the top 2 of craziest Gemaras, that's an accomplishment. Yeah, this is the Gemara. Amar Rava, Machayv inish lebusi bepuria ad lo yada ben Aruch Haman levaruch Mordechai. A mensch is chayev to get spiced on Purim until the level of Adiloi, until he doesn't know the difference in Aruch Haman Ubaruch Mordechai. That's not so crazy. The next bit's the crazy bit. Rabba, not Rava. Rava said that, and then Rabba, the Rebbe Zera. Anyone knows what Gemara I'm about to quote? Okay. Rebbe Zera.
Robert Sexton, Reb Zera.
If the Sudas Purim Behade Dade, they made a Sudas Purim together. Yeah? Ibsum, they became spiced up, drunk. Come Rabba, Shchitei Rebbe Zera. He got up and he shechted Rebbe Zera. Lemacha boyrachmei v'achai. The next day, he must have had charata. He davened to Hashem, and Hashem was mechayah him, mechayah Mason. That was really good. This is cute at the end, but he says the Shana Amala. The next year, Amalei. The next year, Rava turns around to Rav Zera and says, "Neisimav and Avid Suda, Suda's Purim. Why don't you come back for another Suda for Purim this year?" And Amalei says back to him, Rav Zera to Rava, Loi b'chul sha'ata b'sha'ata misurachesh nisa. It's not, they aren't nisim every year, so I'd rather not risk it. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, why wasn't Megillas Esther in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Why is Megillas Esther the fifth of the five Megillas? What's pshat with all the moyadim being nisbatel, Purim sticking around? And Yisrael, I'm just going to say again quickly, just because Yisrael joined again. Number one, why is Megillas Esther not in the Dead Sea Scrolls? All the other Sifrei Nach were, and Tanakh were, except for Megillas Esther. Number two, why is Megillas Esther the fifth of the five Megillas? Number three, why are all of the according to the Medrash, why are all of the Moyadim going to be Nisbatel except for Purim? Number four, according to the Medrash again, also according to the Rambam, he brings some whatever. All of the Sifrei Nach are going to be Nisbatel, except for the Chumash and Esther. And number five, what's going on with this story of Rebbe Zera and Rava shechting Rebbe Zera on Purim and then Tchias HaMesim taking place? So B'ezrat Hashem, if we understand what Purim is, we'll get a chap of how all this fits together. So I have no idea how to start this, okay? But I'm just going to be so much on the bonus line that it should all come out in a way that's going to be niskabel by everybody. So let's say like this. There's the story of your life, yeah? Let's say like this. You go on a camping trip. We spoke about this, but we're going to draw this out now. You go on a camping trip with your son, okay? And it's a whole process. It's a whole experience. It's a journey. First you get in the car and you're listening to the music and you're feeling all elevated, etc. Then you find your spot and you get out the car and you set up your tent and then you go off into the forest together searching for wood to make the fire, and then you come back and you set up the barbecue and you start cooking together, and then you eat, and then he knocks the coke on your shirt and you're all sticky and feel disgusting and you hate him at that minute, and then you make up and then you have some dessert and eat some candies, and then you're lying there in the forest looking up into the sky. You've got your arms here like this, he's lying in your arm and you're looking up at the stars talking about the Ribono Shel Olam and the infinity of creation, etc. Then you go to bed, you cuddle up with him, whatever. You wake up in the morning, he's there, he looks cute. Eventually you get back in the car and you go home. That was the camping trip. Now the camping trip was the camping trip. If different parts happened in different ways, it would still be the camping trip. This is like the deepest thing I can think that we could say, basically. In Megillas Esther, you realize it didn't really matter what happened. The first thing was that the Yidden ate at Sudas Achashverosh, which wasn't Beseda, and then there was a decree of death, and then we were saved. Now, that just like Mordechai said, what did Mordechai say to Esther? He said, you need to go into the Melech and try and work this out. And if you don't, it will work out from a makom acher. It will still work out. It's all going to be okay. The Yidden are going to be saved. So the story of Purim, it could have taken place, it could have manifested in endless different ways, but it would still be called the story of Purim. You with me? So there's this thing called the story of Purim, and then there's the actual Lemaisa, the actual occurrences within the story, the experiences of the story, what happened, how it worked out, the serendipitous, this and that, and this worked out, and then the hashkacha, and he saw this and that happen, etc., etc. But there's the story of Purim that's much greater than all the parts. And you could exchange this part for that part and that part for this part, and it would still be the story of Purim. Just like with your camping trip with your child. It might be that he didn't spill the ketchup on you or the Coke on you, whatever. It'd still be the camping trip. Could be that night he fell asleep too early. You didn't have the whole star experience. It would still be the camping trip. It would take on a different surah, but the actual title, there isn't a word for this. This is what we're trying to get to. There isn't a word. You could call it the story of your life. Let's think about the story of your life. Your life could have played out in endless different ways. It would always be called the story of your life. What we've just described there is the Madrega that is talked about in the Kabbalah called Adam Kadmon. It's not a Madrega. It's not like there's Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, Atsilis, and then Adam Kadmon. That's not how it is, Bichlal. Adam Kadmon is the place, so to speak, in which everything takes place. So to say Adam Kadmon is transcendent, is only half the story. It's transcendent and immanent at the same time. It's above and within. It's not, it's a different thing, Lagamre. It's the place from where the story comes from. Let's call it the story of your life. That's the place where all of the events will arise from and go back into. Are people with me here? Yeah? Chetzi, good. Okay, we're getting there. Oh yeah, okay.
If you can say what you just said in like a plumber.
We're gonna say it again. Okay. There's the story of your life. Yeah. Right now, it looks like this. It could have taken place in any form. It would still be called the story of your life. Just like the story of Purim, it could have happened in any different way. It would still be the story. That's the concept of a story. There's the inyan of the story. There's the so to speak, the place in which the story happens. And then there's the actual elements, the expression, the manifestations, the events, the emotions, the relationships, the players, the people of the story within the story. But it would still
there's a beginning, middle, and an end that are maybe a beginning and an end that are very crucial to the story. Maybe the middle is details.
That's the point. Even to a certain extent, the beginning and the end, like we said, the story of your life. It's the story of your life. Whatever the details are, that's the story of your life. It could come out of that. It could come out of that any experiences. And it could go, and they will dive back into that as well. And just as a side, I don't know if I should go off as a tangent. Maybe before we go there, let's start trying to answer some of the questions. If I remember, I'll mention that at the end. So, who was it who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls? So there's shtickle machlokes.
Can I just go back for 1 second? I just didn't understand the connection to Adam Kadmon, or we can leave that, but I just didn't. That's where I got lost.
The level of Ak, which is referred to Adam Kadmon, is spoken in Kabbalah as Ak. Yeah, the level of Ak is the place in which reality takes place. It's not that there's Asiya, Yetzira, Bria, Atzilus, and Ak. There's Asiya, Yetzira, Bria, Atzilus, and Ak is relevant to Asiya as it is to Atzilus. It's the place in which the whole thing transpires. It's like what we
It's
said.
the story, not the details.
Exactly. It's the place in which the story happens. It's
right.
The story. It's not the Lemaisa, what happened in the story.
Is that unique to Purim?
No, well, it's not unique to it. It's the same with any story. But Purim is one of the most profound stories in Nach. It's called the story of Purim. But it's the concept of a story bichlal. It's the whole inyan of Sefer Bereshis, which is all stories. It's just story after story after story. So the inyan of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were written, like I said, it's a shtickle machlokas, but basically everyone agrees that it was written by a bunch of Yidden called the Essiyim, the Essiyim. Yeah, Aleph Samach Yud Mem, Essiyim. They were a really interesting bunch of Yidden, okay? Because you had basically three sects of Yidden. You had the person, which is like us, yeah, which was mainstream Yiddishkeit. Yeah, they called them the Pharisees. Then you had Prushim. Then you have the Tzedukim, who we know of, who were Koifa and the Torah Shabbat Peh. And then you have at this period of time the Isiyim, which they were basically between about 100 BCE and like 100 after that, like CE. That was when they were around, maybe a little bit earlier. It depends, but either way. Now they were a very interesting sect of Yidden. I did quite a bit of research on them just now, and I pulled out a few points that I want to really just get into, or not get into, just to. Number one, they were largely celibate, okay, which is very un-Jewish, okay. Number two, they had no concept of money. They lived communally, and they bartered. They literally lived without any money. There was collective ownership. They were like the first communists. They were mamish communists. Yeah, there was no ownership. It was all collective. When they would travel from one community to another one of their communities, all they would do would bring a weapon in case they were also very passive, like they were very much pacifists, but they would bring a weapon in case they got to trouble on the way. But they wouldn't bring a case with them, because they would just get to where they were going, walk into someone's house, and just help themselves to their clothes. That was how it was. It was completely communal. It was like the highest spits. Marx would have been very proud of these people. They wore white clothing. Yeah, they put a big emphasis on going to the mikveh, on Tum and Tahara. And now this is a very, very important point, is that Alaroiv, they were koif on the inyan of Tchias Amesim. Or not that they were koif on Tchias Amesim, they took it loika pshutoi. They took Tchias Amesim as hinting to some kind of spiritual thing that will be forever and ever, as opposed to how we understand it, pshutoi, in its simple way, that it's going to be however that's going to look. There's going to be some kind of life given back to the physical bodies of this world. Now, this is what I've been trying to give over for many months or even years, and I think some of us have got this already. The biggest mistake that I understand that exists in Yiddishkeit in our generation is the confusion of thinking that Yiddishkeit has got something to do with Ruchnius. I always learned that Yiddishkeit was about infusing the Gashmias with Ruchnius. But once I learned under my Rebbe deeply, I found out that Yiddishkeit is not about infusing the Gashmias with Ruchnius. Yiddishkeit is about infusing the Gashmias and the Ruchnius with Elokus. That's what Yiddishkeit is about. Ruchnius, because we live in such a material world, we think that anything that is Ruchni is automatically Kadosh, is automatically godly. And that's not true. It is not true at all. Ruchnius can be selfish, just like Gashmias can be selfish. And that is not godly. Godly is selfless. So when a person's involved in ruchnius for themselves, then they're not being godly. They're just being a baltaiva. It's like the same as the guy eating kugel. But it's even worse because the guy who's eating kugel knows that he's got to fix some stuff. But the guy who's doing these deep meditations, but it's all selfish, he thinks he's already got them there. So in some ways, it's better to be the baltaiva for gashmis than it is the baltaiva for ruchnius. The goal of Yiddishkeit, which is different to everything else that I know of, is that we look at ruchnius and gashmius as the same thing. And that's one of the biggest messages of Purim. We've got Yom Kippur, which Hashem says, be ruchni, ruchni, ruchmi, ad ma'oid, mamash, mamash ruchnius. And that's just Kippurim. That's just Yom Kippurim. Then we've got Purim where Hashem is like, drink, eat, hang out with your friends, it's mamash gashmi. So dafka in the word Purim and Yom Kippurim, we've got the raya that Yiddishkeit is about doing Ratzon Hashem. Hashem wants you to be Ruchni, that's Yom Kippur, be Ruchni. Ad Ma'oid, be the Ruchniest you can be. Hashem wants you to be Gashmi, that's Purim. Be Gashmi as much as you need to be to fulfill the mitzvahs of the day. As long as you're being Makai and Ratzon Hashem, that's called godly. Not being Ruchni. Ruchni is not godly. Gashmi is not godly. Godly is godly. Doing Ratzon Hashem Lishma is godly. Doing Ratzon Hashem because it's good for you, it gives you a geschmack, whether it's eating the kugel on Shabbos or whether it's going into the spheres while you look at the Hanukkah licht, if it's for you, it's not godly. That's what we've brought to it. That's the chiddush of Yiddishkeit. The chiddush of Yiddishkeit, if now you're plugging this back in, is connecting to the story. The inyan of the story, the concept of the story, where all the details come out from. That's what Yiddishkeit is about. Everyone's with me? It's connecting to the actual camping trip as opposed to the details in the camping trip. So you've got the ketchup and you've got the Coke and then you've got the stars and you've got the fire and the tent. And that's just all details within the camping trip. It's like looking at the screen. It's the difference between the actual physical screen and the image on the screen. The image on the screen could be anything, but the screen is always there. It's transcendent and immanent at the same time. It's above and within. It's beyond and it's there. It's infinitely present in every pixel, and at the same time, it's infinitely removed and we don't even acknowledge it in any way. Yiddishkeit is about connecting to the story. It's not the story, it's the place of the story. And then we can take all the elements of the story, how they should be taken, which is only relative. They only have a relative value. They only have a relative, they only have relative importance because we're connected. There's the only things that are higher and lower are dictated by the screen. If the screen being the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Rebbeinu Shalom says that this is choshev, this is choshev. If the Rebbeinu Shalom says this isn't choshev, it's not choshev. What's choshev is Torah and mitzvahs. What's not choshev is everything else. So the reason why Megillas Esther, and we'll get back and understand the inyan with the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Asiyim. Megillas Esther is number 5. Yeah, it's the 5th. Why? Because number 5 is the level of Ak, which is always merames to the place in which everything takes place within. That's Megillas Esther. What's the inyan of that Megillas Esther? That all the Moyadim will be Nisbatel and all the Sifrei Nach will be Nisbatel, and Megillas Esther and Purim will remain. It doesn't. The Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe says it doesn't mean that mamash because the Torah is nitzchi. It means that the Moyadim will be like holding a match in broad daylight. It will be so clear what we need to do. Like when Purim comes, before you wouldn't even need to look at your calendar. Yeah, before Pesach comes, a month before Pesach, you wouldn't even need to look at your calendar. You'll already start cleaning up the house, just like the wildebeest, the Havdil in Africa when it comes to the migration. Just go like that, and then just start walking for like 3,000 miles. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. Shavuos, you're going to be picking leaves off trees the day before, and you're going to be preparing the cheesecake without even any thinking about it. That's just like you get up in the morning and you start breathing, you'll start preparing for the Chagim, yeah? But Purim's different because Purim, the inyan of Purim is number 5. It's the revelation of the essence of reality. Not the pratim within reality. It's the revelation of the essence of reality. That's the inyan of Mashiach. That's dafka the inyan of Mashiach. Mashiach is loshen shemen. Yeah, Mashiach from the shemen which is above. It's transcendent, as in it goes above the water. Yeah, it doesn't mix with water and goes above, and at the same time it goes into the very depths of the garment. That's why you need to get it dry cleaned. So it's above and within. It's the essence. That's why it's called an essential oil, and that's why the Goyim came up with the phrase the quintessence. The quintessence of something, the 5th level, came from the Greeks. That's the very essence of the very essence. That's what Purim is. Purim is, and so what's the inyan of the difference between Baruch Haman and Our Mordechai, or Baruch Mordechai and Our Haman? At that point, that's all just details. That's the inyan of where we're trying to get to on Purim, is the hiskashus to the place of where the story comes from. And now, that's everyone's clear so far. We're good. And so this is the clincher. And this is why Tchias Amesim is one of the Yud Gimel Ikarim. And it's the final of the Yud Gimel Ikarim. The definition of death is the histalkus of the Ruchnius from the Gashmius. How's a histalkus? The leaving, it doesn't work so good. The separation of the Ruchnius from the Gashmius. When you take the nefesh from the basa, from the goof, yeah, you take the nefesh, the goof drops dead. Like I remember when I was a kid, one friend of ours got knocked over and killed. I wasn't there. And my friends who were there, who were complete atheists, mamash, he just said to me, he told me, he saw him lying on the floor. He said to me, there was just no one there. He just wasn't there. It's just his body. The Ruchnius had gone, yeah? And there was just the Gashmias. That's the definition of death. The definition of death is that the Ruchnius leaves and the Gashmias just falls to the floor. That's what happens. So the whole inyan of Tchias Amesim, that's the whole inyan of Tchias Amesim, is having hiskashus to the essence of reality, where we realize there is no difference between Ruchnius and Gashmias. That right now in this Hester Panim that we're living in, yeah, there's Ruchnius and there's Gashmias, and so if there's death. That's what happened by the Eitz Adas, that death became a Metzias because there became a chiluk between Ruchnius and Gashmias. But when we go back to the Tchiyah, when we get back to the final place of where we're trying to get to, which is where Hashem reveals who he really is, the essence of reality, mamash, there won't be that dichotomy of Ruchnius and Gashmias. We'll all be aware that there's just the Rebbeinu Shloilem, and to him, there is no Madregas. It's just what he declares is good, and he declares is right. That's all there is. There is no Ruchnius and Gashmias at that level. And that was the message of Rabbi and Rabbi Zera. Dafka on Purim. He shechted him, he came back to life. That's Dafka happened on Purim, right? Because that's where Purim is. Purim is Lamala Mina, death and life. Forget cursed and blessed. I mean, that's really what cursed and blessed is. It's death and life and death. But that's exactly the place of where Purim takes us. You see Lamaisi, you see people lying on the floor like they're dead all over the place. That's the inyan why the Esiyim didn't have Megillus Esther. That's why by the Dead Sea Scroll there was no Megillus Esther. they had this big thing in their mind. They were very religious. There was ruchnius and there was gashmius, and the two don't mix. We're celibate. We don't have any money. We wear white. We go to the mikveh the whole time, and we don't believe in tchias hameshin kapshuto. They couldn't live with Megillas Esther. They couldn't be soivel that Indian. That was too. That's not religious enough. That doesn't make sense, because you're telling me that ruchnius and gashmius is the same thing. That means I have to be miskasher to essence mamash, to the essence of reality. Well, then where would I be? What would happen to me if that happened? Can't do that.
Wow.
So I'm just going to finish this. I don't know if you guys are going to appreciate this, but this to me is the most, in my mind, it's literally the most hoshev thing that Hashem has ever revealed to me. And it's the Inyan. There's a big dian on the first word of the Torah. It says, Bereshis bara Elokim. And everyone screams. Rashi says himself that there's the Inyan of smichus. We've spoken about this, but I'm going to say it again because it's very, very shy to what we're speaking about. Anyone's heard of this Inyan of smichus in dikduk, in grammar? Smichus is when you stick two nouns together, and the first noun takes a spelling change. It's usually in the vowel, but it could take. So instead of aretz means land, and Yisrael is Yisrael, but you put aretz next to Yisrael, and you get eretz Yisrael. Or you put bayit is a house, but you put bayit next to school, you get beit sefer. Base hamedrash, not bayit hamedrash, base hamedrash. So this is the Inyan when you put two nouns together. Yeah, stick with me, guys, because what we just did all the hard work. So if you can stay with me, this is just going to drop in, and it's still going to make a lot of sense. So rashis is in smichus. Rashis, alpi grammar, for it to make any sense, alpi grammar, and Hebrew grammar is always very true, it needs to be followed by a noun, but it's followed by a verb. It's Bereshis bara Elokim. So it really reads, in the beginning of, God created. In the beginning of what? So Rashi, who's aware of the issue, and everyone screams about it, and Rashi says, well, really, if you want to give it pshat, you're going to have to say Bereshis brias olam. He turned bara from a verb into a noun. So it becomes in the beginning of the creation noun of the world. That works. That's grammatically fine. It doesn't say that. It says Bereshis bara Elokim. What's pshat? And this is exactly what we spoke about. There is no word. You have to know that ak is not a name. It's a term we use to refer to something without a name. There are no names at that level. The names are not sure. All of these words in the high levels of Kabbalah are not names. Atik and arich and all of these are terms that we use to refer to things that are nameless, but essence. Because it's essence. Essence is not nameable. You can't name essence. You can only whatever. So Bereshis bara, this thing that we're talking about, the place that holds all the elements, that's nameless. That's nameless. That's you. That's the relationship you have with someone. That's beyond name. That's the place where you are the place where you take place. You are the place where the elements of your life happen. But the elements of your life are called your name. But the you, that's nameless. That's much too holy for names. That's beyond name. That's the Baal Hashem, the Baal Shem Tov. That's beyond name.
Etzem.
Etzem, mamash. And that's what it says, Bereshis bara Elokim. The noun, there's a noun there, but it's not with a word. So It is correct. It's just the noun that comes after Bereshis can't be expressed in letters, so it's the white space after Bereshis. So it's in the beginning of this nameless thing that we can't talk about and speak of, Bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. Did anyone get that?
Wow. Yes. Yes. Very much so.
Okay. We should be Zocher to Purim. I think I'm giving another show in a day or something. It's much easier going. But this was this is Purim, and just for a minute, just to try and pay attention to the screen. Try and pay attention to the screen and what the image is taking place. Try and be miscovered to the place of the story. Just even for a moment, and then I think you're Yotzi Purim. That's why you should have a little schluff, because then you go back to that place. And if you're Zocher to drink in a kosher way, people say have a They say have a kosher Pesach and a kosher Purim and a Freilichen Pesach. B'ezrat Hashem. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
You have to keep in mind that